Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on interpreting computerized tomography or CT scan in musculoskeletal practice part 1, which essentially means the very basics. In nutshell, when you take a CT scan in your hand, what do you need to arm yourself to read and evaluate like basic CT scan data and try to come to a conclusion or draw a conclusion as to what the diagnosis can be. Again, as a reminder, like MRI, this is not a first order diagnostic imaging. The first order diagnostic imaging, as you by now know, is X-rays. And I already have videos on my YouTube channel for basics of X-rays, as well as I will be having advanced X-rays too, which we discussed earlier in the week. Okay, so the next slide right now, is the learning objectives. Hopefully by the end of today's lecture or webinar, you will be able to understand the physics of CT scans, understand, indications, advantages, risks, uses, and other clinical conditions, explore a little bit of variations in terms of what are the types of CT scans possible, and when do you need, why do you need to, order a CT scan if you do need to. Also, I hope through the webinar, you'll be able to understand and learn the different slices, different imaging styles, different visualization planes of CT scan data, as well as obviously how to read the CT scan in orthopedic cases only. At the end, like as we have done in the past, I'll be showing you some normal and pathological CT scans of bigger joint and body segments for you to better appreciate and understand what clues you can find through CT scan data to help your guidance in terms of diagnosis. So what to expect today is nothing but the content of a book. Today we'll be discussing a little bit of physics, how image is being processed, and then we will drop down to, obviously the important part is, when do you decide that you need a CT and how to read CT scan. At the end, we will interpret different joints and anatomical segments of the body in terms of comparing and contrasting normal versus pathological. And at the end, we'll have a question and answer session where you'll be asking me questions. Like earlier, please have a pen and paper ready. Again, the information presented on the slide is just bullet points, like topic sentences, not the description. I will actually try to weave a story for you from the CT information that we will be presenting in today's lecture or webinar, and hopefully you will be able to write the important details and nuances that we will be discussing throughout the next hour or so. So what is computerized tomography or CT scan? Obviously, it is a type of X-ray, but on a higher radiation level and multiple slices, because we all know radiograph or X-ray is two-dimensional, whereas CT scan is three-dimensional, because you can have sagittal plane, coronal plane, and transverse plane axis or planar scans or slices, which can be combined in software to make three-dimensional images of the structure that you are seeing or evaluating. Now, when just a little bit of history, in 1971, that was when the first CT image was taken on a human individual. A little couple of years earlier than MR scan, when it was launched in mass practice or population. So here is a very, very old, CT scan, the whole entire thing is pretty old. Nowadays, the CT scan equipment is very, very, small and very, very futuristic, so to say, and it doesn't look this bad. So Physics, a little bit of physics to understand how you can create the CT scan data or information. It's obviously, as I said, it's a radiological beam or X-ray which rotates around the body. Imaging device divides the patient into 3D network of squares. Now, this is very important. Each square is called a voxel. Now, each square has, like, you know, 3 axes: the mediolateral axis, the anteroposterior axis, and the inferior-superior axis. So 3 axes makes a 3-dimensional image in the sagittal plane, in the coronal plane, and in the your transverse or horizontal plane. So these 3 planes constitute the 3-dimensional aspect of a CT scan data. Now, what is CT scan? You have already know, because from your smartphone and laptops and tablets, that the more pixels you have in your screen, the better the resolution is. So voxel, pixel is a 2-dimensional thing. Voxel is a 3-dimensional pixel, which means it has 3 axes. That's it. So what happens, how the X-ray is being produced, and what happens at the end of the image production. So X-rays obviously need to pass through organs and structure for the beam to go through that organ and fall in like an X-ray plate. There are scanners. Within the scanners, it has hardware and software where the images of that segment is basically dropped in 3 different planes and constructed as a 3-dimensional image. Computer generates that image of the internal structures, but here is what could be important for you. Usually, like MR, CT scan is also shades of gray. Deeper gray means darker and kind of black. Lighter gray is whiter and kind of, you know, very bright in color. So it's a grayscale X-ray type of coefficient graph that falls for different segments of the body. Different structures of the body will have different shades of gray. That's how basically you need to understand and look at the CT. But like MR, if you introduce dyes, if you introduce some other colors, there is a possibility of doing, you know, have color in the CT scan. It could be either introduced early as a dye or post-processed. Post-process, when you already have the image in the software and you want to check the flowmetry, CT, like, you know, CT angio or CT brain, you know, a circle of Willis. If someone has a stroke, hemorrhage or hematoma or whatever, then they can post-process to check what blood flow is, where it is lacking or where it is more. So that you can actually do. All right, what are the methods of CT scan? Initially, right now, there are 2 variations of CT scan. One is axial, which essentially means slice by slice, like this loaf of bread, which you actually have in the morning, right? Hopefully I can get my cursor. Here is the loaves of bread, and you can see each slice of bread is basically stacked on one on top of other to form the 3-dimensional image. And that is exactly slice by slice method. Now, this is the first generation type of you know, CT scan which had been developed. But now, and now I don't mean like yesterday, probably 10, 15, maybe 20 years, you have spiral or multi-slice method where the X-ray tube continuously rotates around the patient, and also the patient can move through the opening of the CT like this, right? Because if I am laying down supine, the motion of me, the gantry where I am laying down actually moves, and the X-ray moves circularly across my body, circumferentially, so that it takes 3-dimensional image of the structure which is supposed to irradiate. And initially we had 16 slices of CT scan data. Now it has, the norm is 32 slices. Newer scanners can go up to 64 to maximum 128 slices. But what's the good and not so good thing? Good thing is, the more slices you have, the more information. The more information you have, the better you will be able to evaluate the structure you are trying to evaluate. But what is the con? That's the pro, I said. The con is that means there is more radiation of ionizing radiation of X-ray in the body, which obviously could have a detrimental effect in the long term. Right? Makes sense? So that's basically the multi-slice approach. So multi-slice is the picture on the right, where you can have multiple sections or slices computed together by the hardware and the software itself, projected in the scanner to have a three-dimensional image. Now, does that mean axial or slice by slice is not used right now? It is actually still used in process. It is used by surgeons to check in one slice or maybe 2 or 3 slices what actually is happening within the segments. Let's say if there is a fracture, if the surgeon wants to do some kind of implant in there and he needs to know the size of the implant, obviously that has to relate to the size of the bone, right? Size of the screw, diameter of the screw, length of the screw. For that, slice by slice is needed. So overall, do you and I need it? Probably not. Surgeons need it to decide on what type of surgery that they need to perform. Also, I said I don't need it, but I actually need it for my research. My research is in shoulder joint. I need slice by slice method because I do muscle modeling. And so I do biomechanical, I'm a biomechanical scientist or a research scientist. So I do biomechanical studies. And for that, I need CT scan data to help interpret subkinematics and kinetics. To understand kinetics, I do muscle modeling, and to help me create those muscles in and around the shoulder joint, I need slice by slice data and not multi-slice method. Then I lose a lot of information if it's multi-slice. If it's slice by slice, I can get a lot of information for me to process three-dimensionally with a different software. All right, so how is this CT image produced? Obviously, the higher the X-ray coefficient value of the voxel, the greater the intensity, which is obvious. So more X-ray you can, penetrates the volume, and the intensity of X-ray is more, obviously you will be able to see inside what is better happening. So that the image will be crisper, the image will be have more depth. You will have more, differentiation between structures. So the higher the X-ray coefficient value, then greater is the intensity, and as a result, you will have better picture quality. Images can be 2D or 3D. Obviously, when you read any scan, MR scan or CT scan, the image itself is a 2D, but you see that multiple 2D images in the 3 planes that creates a 3-dimensional image in your brain or in your mind, isn't it? But let's say you get a CD-ROM from the radiologist, then they probably will also create the 3-dimensional CT scan data. Some of them do, some of them don't. That's kind of what I have found out in years. I'm not sure what happens here in the southeastern continent. So that is exactly the difference or meaning between 2D and 3D. It's that, just that when you look at a picture, when the scan is in your hand, you see actually a 2D image of the 3 planes and create a 3D image in your brain and mind. All right, next, this, because it is highlighted in red, this is important for you to remember, and I would like you to write it down or note it down. Like X-ray, denser structures like, let's say, bone appear lighter in color on a CT scan. So bone margins, which essentially means the periosteum, right? Cortical part, the cortex of the bone appears as a white or a light color, very, very bright. CSF, which is essentially fluid, obviously appears darker, and brain, because it has different densities of tissues within, so it has shades of gray or variation in the shades of gray, depending on where you look at, what you are looking at. If there is presence of hematoma, which essentially is solid, that will be appearing white in color. If there is hemorrhage on the other end, that is liquid, like CSF is fluid, that will appear darker in color. So depending on what you are looking at in a brain injury will again change. So what is the difference between CT versus MR? CT is usually cheaper. It scans better showing bone than MRI, but MR or CT is less effective at showing soft tissues. Please note it down. MR is very, very good in showing the structural differentiation between in the internal organ within the body system. But if there is a fracture, if there is some anomaly within the joint or bone, CT scans are better in doing that. Now, here I'll take a little bit of time from you. Do remember, it does not mean that in MRI you will not be able to see fracture. In fact, if you remember in MR scan, when we were discussing about the hip joint, there was a slice or slide of MRI picture. Please mute your mic, whoever's mic is unmute your mic. All right, 1 second. Give me a second. 1 second. All right, here you go. Sorry about that. So what we were talking about is essentially CT scans are certainly better for bones, but that does not mean that MRI will not show you bone, trauma, fracture, or any joint fracture. It will show, but it's just that CT scan information is better in understanding where the fracture is occurring. But MRI has better structural differentiation, capacity to differentiate trauma within soft tissues versus nervous system versus bone structures. But so overall, what you need to know, CT scans, even if it is better at showing bones, is usually done to check clinical decision making for surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, to understand what type of surgery they would be doing, why they would be doing, and what type of implant in terms of dimensions, what type of implants they will be introducing. That's the reason they do a CT scan of that joint or for that bone structure. All right, now CT scans are usually short in time or period, but MRI takes more time, is more involved. That's another way, because in MRI as well as CT, you have to lay motionless, you cannot move. So the shorter the time period, it is easier for individuals or patients to lay motionless within the within that equipment, right? Makes sense. So could you please, whoever has their video unmuted, check their video and unmute yourself, please. CT scans can be harmful to the patient, and you know why? Because CT scans has radiological waves or ionizing radiation like X-rays. That's why it is bad for the patient, while MRIs have no known biohazards, okay? But both are used for detecting cancer. In fact, for osteosarcoma, actually CT scan is better in understanding osteosarcoma or tumor or cancer of the bone than it is for MRI. So limitations: in order for better clarity, more exposure to radiation is necessary. So, and obviously too much radiation is not good for health or harmful for the body. Now, this is very important, not very good at depicting soft tissues, meaning if there is any trauma to the soft tissue, it's not that it will not, you will not be able to look at it and evaluate it, but it is easy for you to miss it, misdiagnose it, and fail to read any kind of trauma or injury to soft tissues. But if there is dyes, like contrast medium is inserted, and then you check a CT scan for soft tissue trauma, certainly you can see. But again, when you are introducing dyes, there are again harmful effects of that too. So from that standpoint, MRI scans are a little bit better on that. In order to change the image plane, you have to move the patient, unlike with MRI. So essentially, it's not that you have to move the patient actually moves on the slider automatically. It's just a little bit of an hassle, but it's an automatic thing. I don't think it's a big deal and a huge limitation at all. It was there in the book, so I had it written down, but practically speaking, it should not be considered as a limitation. All right, now indications. Indications mean what we as allied healthcare professionals, what do we need and what we may not need as such. Probably in your entire career, in your lifetime, you probably will not come across to diagnose, abdominal ailments like renal stones, pancreatitis, aneurysms, and appendicitis, and all of it, because that's not our specialty. We are movement science specialists. So movement science specialist obviously is very neuromusculoskeletal oriented. I'm not negating the fact that yes, we do have respiratory therapists too, but I'm not taking that under consideration from musculoskeletal standpoint. Also, we probably don't need to understand and diagnose stages of cancer which originate in the abdomen and obviously follow the progress of that cancer, which obviously oncologists and oncosurgeons are better at that to see. But what do we do? What we do need as musculoskeletal or orthopedic practice, probably to understand complex fractures such as those around the joints. It is just not limited to knee, elbow, or shoulder, but you can do in the foot. And in scoliosis and hyperkyphosis, if the surgeon needs to understand, he or she will certainly do a CT scan with or without contrast medium involved of the surgical segment. It's a must. Otherwise, they will not understand the implants and the type of implant, dimension of implant. There are other surgical biomechanics involved in that. It is also beneficial for us to understand non-contractile unit injuries. So example like ligament, tendons, cartilage, other fibrous connective tissue which can be traumatized. That is very much essential for you to evaluate under CT scan. Brain and spinal cord injuries and extent of constriction in the coronary arteries. Again, I'm not sure how much we will come across, but I know some PTs who are in acute care setting, who are in emergency setting, who are in respiratory therapists. They actually try to evaluate coronary artery constrictions too. So advantages and disadvantages are risk. Obviously, the advantage is it has better spatial resolution, not better than MRI, but than X-ray. That's obvious because X-ray is 2D and CT scan is 3D. CT scan has more ionizing radiation passing through the body segments. So obviously, you will be able to see a more crisper and actual footage or, slice or picture of the segments that you are irradiating. Shows of soft tissues better than X-ray, but not as good as MR scan. Overcomes the problem of superimposition of bones. For example, you are taking a knee joint APPA and the patella. There is a problem in the patella, but the patella is superimposed within the joint. In the X-ray, you cannot different. There is no depth because it is a 2D method, not a 3D method. When you have 3D, you have the perception of depth. Here in CT scan, if you check any joint, if you image any joint, then perception of depth in understanding the different planes and understand what is beyond that bone, what is behind that bone. Is there any space between the bone? You can easily evaluate that. That's what exactly I was saying. The last bullet point makes it easier to distinguish bone from front and back from obviously from each other. Now the risk part. Obviously, it's an ionizing radiation. X-rays may directly or indirectly affect the genetic constitution, leading to cancer or any tumor or any other issues to genetic mutations. Obviously, similar to MR, it can cause claustrophobia, and contrast agents are, again, if a surgeon is doing, will be doing an X-ray and trying to understand that, probably he or she will be using contrast medium, and we'll talk very briefly on contrast medium later on. But again, please do note too much of contrast is not good at all for your body. Time taken to generate a scan compared to X-ray, normal X-ray, very less than 5 minutes. CT scan could be 15 minutes, could be 30 minutes, could be also be an hour, depending on how much irradiation you want and what is the order for the CT scan. So future of CT scans. So right now, like GE Discovery, this CT scan is very sleek, very futuristic, because the time to irradiate is very less. So let's say, for example, if a scan for the entire spine took like 40 to 50 minutes, probably in this, not probably, but for sure, in the Discovery type of CT scanner, it is close to half, if not half the time. So from 40 minutes, it will drop down to 25 minutes or so. That's amazing, because then you will have less amount of ionizing radiation in the body. Radiation exposure, and also has clear and more crisper image and good differentiation. Not as good as MR, but really close to MR, because the detecting material has changed to garnet, which is it's not a diamond or emerald or sapphire, but it is a form of stone, precious stone. Garnet is a precious stone. So that's what they are using recently. Okay. So that's basically the future ideas of what CT scan can do to the human body in terms of bettering itself. So this is what the whole meat of today's talk is about: how to read CT scan data. CT scans are images positioned same like MR in the supine. When you are looking at a scan, you are essentially thinking, especially the axial one, you are thinking the patient foot is towards you, head is farthest from you. I'll repeat over here so that you can visualize in your brain. If I close my eyes and I am trying to visualize, orient the CT scan data of axial view, the patient is supine lying like this, foot or feet towards me, and head ends farthest from me. So inferior to superior, as if I am looking through from the feet up towards the head. That is how the CT scan is oriented, exactly similar to MRI, right? As we discussed earlier. So essentially, when you look at the CT scan, the left and rights are reversed. So your right is the patient's left, and your left is the patient's right. So left and right are reversed. And always read when I started, I actually read cranially and then moved caudally, superior to inferior. That's how I read, because when I close my eyes, I see structurally, okay, head, eyes, nose, and blah, 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 and going downwards towards the hip, knee, and then go down towards the feet. And then superficial, outside to inside, outside to inside. Now, when we are talking cranially to caudally, it is essentially the axial part of the scan. When we are talking about superficial to deep, it can either be your sagittal view or your coronal view. So from lateral to medial, right? From lateral to medial or anterior to posterior, however you look at it. But for transverse views, axial views, you are looking from cranial to caudal. So please note it down if you are writing. When you are looking axial view, okay, transverse view, you are looking cranial to caudal, head to toe. When you are looking at the sagittal view and coronal view, for sagittal view, you are looking from lateral to medial, and for coronal view, you are looking from anterior to posterior. So that's how you are going to read it. But if you ask me today, do I follow this rule? I actually don't. I now know, because as I told you, this is not your first order diagnostic imaging. You have already taken history. You have already checked, evaluated with all your ROMs and muscle strength and other evaluative process and orthopedic tests. You have probably seen x-rays. Now you fairly have a good idea what is happening. And if you want to take a look either of MR on the CT, you know what you're looking, you know what your target area structure is. I go directly to that target area and try to confirm, clinically correlate. Even in a radiologist report, when you read the report, at the end it always says, and it is mandatory to write it down in bold, in capital letters, that please clinically correlate with the report of the CT scan or MR scan. So exactly, your eyes, your fingers, palpatory techniques are key to diagnose structure or get some more information. The MR scan and CT scans is only helping you make sure that what you are thinking, what your hypothesis is 100% true and correct in terms of your diagnosis. So when you treat something, you are not shooting an arrow in the dark. You know what you are treating and accurately treat that patient to him or her independence or activity, level of independence or improvement in activities of daily living. Okay. So CT scans, as we talked about, it can be coronal, sagittal, or transverse plane. Now, most of the time, you probably will not come across CT data, even for musculoskeletal or orthopedic practice, because as I said, CT views or scans are only needed for surgeons to decide in their clinical decision making about type of surgeries. But if you do see, you probably will see any of the two views, not all the three views. You essentially do not need all the three views to cross check. You obviously will be seeing the transverse view, like the axial one, and either the coronal view or the sagittal view. Any of those coronal or sagittal you will see to evaluate what you are thinking is actually correct or not, or incorrect. So this is basically the example of a normal knee joint and what you are going to see if you are holding a CT scan data. So it can be either a coronal segment, sagittal segment, or transverse segment. Now, as I told just earlier before, you probably will check the transverse segment, and then you can either check coronal or sagittal. It's not that you cannot or you don't want to. It's just that you don't need to spend that much of time to have another view. I'm not saying you don't, but you at some point with experience, you don't need to see, okay? Also here, two things are written, non-contrast and contrast. So one has no dyes introduced in the body, the other one has dyes introduced in the body. So when without a dye, when non-contrast medium, look at this white edge. This is nothing but periosteum, and from the periosteum you have the cortex, you have the bone cortex, the hard bone that you are seeing. Cortical thinning is occurring right over here. I can see that. Note the thickness of the cortex here, and when you're coming down in the knee joint, there is hardly any cortical thickness left. So it proves to me or shows me that there is periosteum has been debrided, and probably there is thinning, or there is probably obliteration of the cortical hard bone mass. So that is exactly the same in this case over here too. Here, as you can note, is actually suprapatellar fat pad and infrapatellar fat pad. So fat being dense is also white in color. Same thing right about here, just above the patella, just around the knee joint. When you are introducing a contrast medium or a dye, look at how the image changes. The bone, both the soft spongy cancellous bone, including the marrow, or which is trabecular bone, as well as the cortical bone and periosteum are very, very dark, because the dye is absorbed by the bone and other soft tissue, which makes it that deeper or darker shades of gray. Now take a look at this periosteum. Periosteum was white or light gray or bright, however you want to define. But after introducing the cortical bone mass, it changed to very, very dark material or dark color, right? Look at this right over here. So this is the very reason surgeons prefer dyes. Surgeons prefer to introduce dyes to check if there are any anomaly, trauma, injury, pathology present within the bone and the related soft tissues. I am not saying soft tissues like just muscle, but ligaments and tendons and cartilage also, to evaluate the type of surgical technique that they would be doing. So that's one aspect. So, but why did I have two different slices or scans? The one on the left, non-contrast and contrast. The one on the right, which I only have the sagittal view, has non-contrast and contrast. Okay, non-contrast I can understand similar, but look at the two contrasting views. Both have, but looks a little bit different, because The change in the gray shade is also dependent on the type of contrast medium using. The type of contrast medium the surgeons, or in this case the radiologist, is using, radiologist technician or radiologist is using. So here they used iodine based dye, and on my right, under sagittal contrast, right where I am pointing my arrow or mouse, that is a barium based dye or barium sulfate. Now please note, barium based dyes are actually, coming down and are a rarity, because there are a lot of side effects for the individual. So barium based dyes or barium sulfate is not used regularly nowadays. They mostly use iodine, and there are other types of chemicals that they can also introduce in the body to enhance the soft tissue structures. All right, got it? So again, non-contrast versus contrast, and the type of contrasting shades will vary depending on the dyes contrast medium introduced within the body system. So we talked about normal knee joint right over here. Let's talk about pathological knee joint. Now, as you can notice, this is obviously, as you can imagine, this is a non-contrast CT scan. And you can see the white layer of the periosteum and the cortical bone and the beautiful trabecular bone or the spongy bone. Right here, as I have pointed with the red arrow, there is a fracture. So again, what is here? Useful in surgical decision making, where I am pointing the fourth bullet point. It is usually, you probably will never in your lifetime order a CT scan for musculoskeletal practice. You probably will not. You probably will limit to MR. That is also if there is any soft tissue injuries or intervertebral disc damage, then only. Otherwise, you will not. So for CT scan musculoskeletal practice, it is used mostly 90, maybe 95 or 99% of the time for surgical decision making. But what is beautiful is this, in an X-ray, you can probably notice just this fracture right over here, but not appreciable in a radiograph. But look, it's a tibial plateau fracture of a coronal slice that you are looking at, okay? So it's obviously one slice out of 16 or 32 slices. You are probably in the superficial part of the bone or maybe deep within the knee joint. I am not sure where you are at, because I have to look at number of slices that this individual has taken, right? It is dependent on that. Let's say this is like a 32 slice CT, and probably you are between, let's say, about 12 to 16 slices. That's where you are probably at. Look at the fracture length, which was not appreciable, not seen under normal X-ray. It started from the tibial plateau. Follow my cursor, follow my mouse. Started from here, went right underneath the tibial base plate, stopped over here, and then continued downwards towards the condyle. Here there is probably a little bit of displacement or dislodgement of the tibial plateau, came up right over here, and then ended in the completely on the lateral aspect. Oh, this is like the right leg. So this is the lateral aspect of the knee joint. So entire section right over here is kind of broken out, avulsed out probably. So that's basically the reason why the surgeon wanted to see a CT scan to understand better the fracture, extent of the fracture, and what type of surgical implant that he will be introducing within the joint system. Other abnormal results that you can note in a musculoskeletal CT scan is if there is a presence or absence of abscess, arthritis, obviously bone tumors, any kind of tumor. It doesn't mean just osteosarcoma, since we were talking only of orthopedics or musculoskeletal. So it will be obviously osteosarcoma. And then scar tissue, post-surgical scar tissue, where you can also notice. So these 4 or 5 things, including fracture, is what you should be able to appreciate in a normal CT scan. But after introducing a dye, you can probably differentiate these quadriceps over here, hamstrings, or maybe adductors, because you are seeing a coronal size. There could be little bit of quadriceps here in here, and it could be adductors also, right? It is hard in one slice to predict which muscle you are looking at. You have to see all the slices, or at least half of the slices, to predict where you are located in the slice and what muscles you are evaluating. See. Okay, now in terms of variations or the type of CTs that it is you can come across. CTs, as we talked about, is contrast or enhanced. So this is non-contrast, no dyes are introduced. This is contrast or dyes are introduced within the body segment. The dyes are introduced as oral, intravenous, or rectal, or could be intrathecal. All right, so oral could be like barium sulfate, intravenous could be iodine based, intravenous, and then you can have also nasal. You have not heard, there is something called xenon CT, xenon or xenon gas. Patients can inhale xenon gas, and then CT scans are done. This is extremely rare throughout the world. Very few locations across the world, probably less than 20 locations across the whole world uses xenon CT. That's a rare thing, but yes, xenon gas can be inhaled, and then CT scans can also be taken under, and then you can actually see that too. Also, there are two other, with IV, you can also use gastrographin. It's also a type of dye, and it has less, symptoms and side effects than iodine and barium sulfate. So gastrographin is another type of contrast medium. Do you need to know all this contrast medium? Honestly, certainly you don't need to remember or understand the contrast medium. But again, please do note, if you are looking at a contrast medium, CT scan, the shades of gray will vary depending on the type of contrast medium that you are looking at or introduced into the patient's body. Yes, obviously contrast mediums are given because to differentiate between organs and improve lesion, that is any kind of lesion. It's not just tear of a soft tissue, but also cancer, other kind of tumors and other kind of lesions. It could be space occupying lesions, SOL in the brain, that too. So that's what mostly used for, to detect lesion and characterize the stage or grade of lesion. Decision making consideration. Probably we are not in the position to order CT scan, but if you are, I'm not sure if you will be able to, but let's say if you do, then you need to understand, why do I need a CT scan? Is X-ray enough for me to evaluate and come to a diagnosis? And 99% of the time, if not 99, 98% of the time in your entire lifetime of your practice, you probably will never order a CT scan. And if you do, I think it's only for 1 or 2% of your clients, then you can you want to see a CT scan to check the fracture site or abscess or any other ligaments and tendonal issues. Now, would you be introducing contrast medium or not? Again, it's a surgeon's call or a radiologist's call. But if you are in that position, honestly, I don't do it. I usually do non-contrast ones, because that suffices my understanding, my thought process. I don't need to introduce any contrast with the things that I do in my clinical practice. If I need, which is a rarity, then I only do non-contrast. I don't do contrast medium CT scans. All right, now this is probably what you were waiting for. So how to read cervical and lumbar spinal CT? Obviously, you can have 3 views, but you probably will be seeing the transverse or axial view, and the sagittal view will help you to appreciate what is happening, especially in a spine like MR. You will undergo axial and sagittal. Hardly you will see any coronal views. Probably you will not need that. Surgeons, yes, do need, but as allied health care professionals, providers, we don't. So you are looking for curvature of the spine. You're looking for alignment of the vertebral bodies and the spinous processes and the facets. and you are looking for height of the vertebral bodies. Okay, but these things I can also do it under X-ray, right? So why do I need a CT scan? So this actually shows you for conservative management of musculoskeletal pain or movement dysfunction, you do not, and I repeat, you do not need to order a CT scan, because what you are looking for within the CT right over here is what you can easily appreciate in X-ray, if not also in an MR, even though it's not as good as CT for bony standpoint, but still you can certainly decide on the curvature, bony alignment, and height of vertebral body. But you cannot, unfortunately, you cannot appreciate height of the disc, right? You cannot appreciate the cerebrospinal fluid and the nervous system, because like here, you cannot see anything other than the bones unless you introduce contrast medium or dyes. If you do not apply dyes or contrast medium, this is a normal cervical spine. I mean, how different it is than a good digital X-ray, dynamic X-ray. A dynamic X-ray, probably 99% of the time, I am happy with that. I don't need a CT scan for this very reason, because it doesn't give me any extra added benefit in terms of my diagnosis, right? So for the purposes of this webinar on non-contrast dyes or unenhanced CT scans, normal versus pathological. Under pathological, you have axial view or transverse plane view and the sagittal view. So under here, what you can notice, look at this huge fracture on the sagittal one, and this same fracture on the axial scan. This is nothing but C1, C2. That is called hangman's fracture or C2 fracture. So if someone wants to hang themselves or gets hurt in a whiplash injury, the odontoid process with this fracture enters the medulla oblongata and probably pierces through the breathing center in EMO, thereby that with respiratory distress, that individual expires or dies. So this is essentially, again, I am repeating on, and please hammer this in your brain forever. That is the reason CT scan could be used, is to understand fracture, if it's stable, unstable, and type of implant that would be using. So from our standpoint, we probably don't need musculoskeletal CT scan data. All right, so this is basically C2 fracture, and that is called hangman's fracture too. So lumbar spine, normal versus pathological, doesn't give me any extra information or data compared to a dynamic digital X-ray or a fluoroscopy. But in pathological, uncontrast or unenhanced, non-contrast on unenhanced CT scan, you are seeing there is L5S1 listhesis, spondylolisthesis of L5S1 on the sagittal view, right? Obviously, you cannot, if you want, you can see a coronal view, but it is not no use. You can certainly will see an axial view, but there is no point for me to show it, because you can easily appreciate that it is completely unstable. And the look at the spinous process comes over here, and then there is a dent. So obviously the surgeon needs to fuse L4, L5, S1 through bracing or caging or titanium cages, and basically fix and fuse the L5 to S1 sacrum, first sacrum, to make the spine as stable as possible. That's basically it. Now, how to read shoulder and hip joint CT. We have already discussed about the knee joint, normal knee joint and pathological knee joint, where we check the tibial fracture, tibial plateau fracture. So we will be only understanding the shoulder and the hip joint for rest of the webinar. So again, view can be all the three, but you will probably see the transverse or axial and then the sagittal portion. Look for, obviously, again, the bony alignment. Now, soft tissue integrity. Well, why would you do it for a shoulder more so? Let's say hip joint, maybe you want to do, you may not want to do, I don't care. But shoulder, probably if you do, you want to check for the alignment of AC joint, acromion with humeral head, AC joint, acromioclavicular joint, acromion and the humeral head relationship in a shoulder trauma, and check the subacromial space or volume, right? Check the relationship of supraspinatus tendon, but it's not a good, scan for soft tissue. Yes, exactly. You are right. MR would be better, but if you want to check both bone and soft tissue, you have to introduce a contrast medium or a dye to check rotator cuff integrity, or if there is any tendonal tear, musculotendinous junction tear, supraspinatus belly underneath tear or above the belly tear, or if there is any supraspinatus bursitis present or not. You can certainly the radiologist will introduce the dye, and you can assess, evaluate the soft tissues in and around the shoulder joint, and that is exactly the same for hip joint also. So now these two slices or CT scans are I did not take it. This is for my research purpose. This is one of my obviously de-identified based on regulations and privacy settings. This is one of my research models where I had taken the CT scan information to do muscle modeling. So here all the muscles. This is over here is basically the deltoid. Right over here, as you can see, a hardly darker shade of gray line. So underneath this line is your rotator cuff muscle. Right across over here where I'm hovering the mouse. Over here is your deltoid, and then over here is there is more. So this is underneath again, because the patient is supine lying. We are looking from feet above towards the shoulder. So this part right over here is the posterior section of the body. So this probably has blending of latissimus, blending of teres minor, blending of teres major. So all of these muscles are blending in here. It is very hard to evaluate soft tissues over here. But this is basically for muscle modeling. I needed that. And this is normal. This is pathological. What happened here? This is from an individual under a road traffic accident. That is an accident in a car. Somehow he or she, that individual, essentially was driving, and then there was an accident, and somehow the right shoulder, okay, sorry, not the right, left shoulder. Right is obviously the patient's left shoulder. So let me orient you first. That probably would be better. Anterior, you can see the sternum. This is basically your thoracic cavity. These are the ribs, and this is the scapula or posterior section. Over here, you will have supraspinatus. Under here, you will have infraspinatus, latissimus dorsi, teres minor, major, whatever. Over here, you should be having pec major. Here, you will have deltoids, and just underneath over darker line, you will have your rotator cuff insertion. The humeral head to your left should be really like a full moon or a sun, completely circular. Here it's not. There is an avulsion fracture of the anterior humeral head right over here. The entire chunk of the left humerus is kind of pulled more medially towards the sternum, resulting in a complete rupture or fracture of the anterior part of the humeral head, which is translated medially. So that's why you see very, very rough ridges across the humeral head, and certainly it's not as circular as it should be, normally speaking. Again, see, fracture. But even after fracture, obviously you need a surgeon to fix it. After it is fixed, you can certainly evaluate the CT scan data and appreciate what has happened, and maybe it will help you to rehab your patient better. But since I hardly do any post-op rehab, post-op orthopedic surgical rehab, I am an osteopath and a chiropractor. I do mostly musculoskeletal pain management. So I'm a pain management specialist, so I don't deal with these kind of situations at all. All right. Lastly, we'll talk about hip joint. This is one single individual. So you are again seeing from the feet above towards the head. The patient is lying. This is the posterior aspect. This is the anterior aspect. This part is the thigh. This is the abdominal area, very well noted. Obviously, you can see the spine. This is your which leg? If the patient is laying down, you answer yourself. This is exactly the patient's right leg, and this side, that portion is saying A, and B is patient's left leg or left foot. So you are actually looking at a normal hip, completely circular femoral head, very, very beautiful dome-shaped acetabular labrum and acetabular cavity with the nice periosteum and cortical layer, as you can see. And you have soft bones or trabecular bones along the edge in the middle too. Here, what you notice is, oh my gosh, A and B, there is a fracture right in the anterior portion of the acetabular rim and the posterior portion of also of the acetabular rim. In fact, the posterior portion of the acetabulum fracture is so much that the femoral head has impacted, jammed in the acetabulum so much that this portion of the rim has actually gone within the innominate bone, within the right innominate. This acetabular rim moved medially within the right innominate. And look at over here, there should be acetabular labrum trauma, capsular trauma. But obviously the arteries could have been ruptured. There are only 3 arteries, unfortunately. So this hip is at a high risk of avascular necrosis. And after the surgeon will probably do an arthroplasty. Depending on the age and condition, he or she can do a hemiarthroplasty, or they can do also a complete full arthroplasty too. Depending, again, it's a surgeon's call decision. And then you can certainly check an X-ray in post-op rehab to understand the mechanics of fracture and what actually happened, and then devise your rehab protocol, exercise protocol accordingly. So you can certainly do that, and you should be doing it. You may not order CT scan, but you can check post-surgically what the surgeon actually saw prior to surgery that made him choose or decide to go in for surgery and that kind of implant. This is very much related to surgical biomechanics. All right. So from hip joint, that's where we end. We discussed about cervical and lumbar spine. We discussed about shoulder joint. We discussed about hip joint. And initially we discussed about normal and pathological knee joint. So take home message is obviously a little bit about methodology, how the CT scan image is being produced, what are the risks, how you can read it. This is very, very important. What are the views and how you can read it? When do you decide? Probably this is not related much to you. Variations, this is important. Contrast medium or enhanced CT scans is what you probably need to know, and normal versus pathological CT scans. Okay. So this is where I will be ending my talk today. This is the part of the resource which I have used. Mostly I have used these 2 books. If you find it, these 2 books are wonderful books for allied healthcare professionals, and this is basically the books that I use in my teaching in radiology or imaging in US. These are the 2 books that my content is based out of. Again, my contact information by now you know. I would strongly recommend you to subscribe to the YouTube channel to understand concepts, philosophies of diagnosis, various types of diagnosis, various types of treatment. And I also have biomechanics of lumbar spine dysfunctions and all. You can take a look if you want to know more about osteopathic and chiropractic approach towards a lumbar spine mechanics, TMJ mechanics, ART or active release techniques. Those are the videos that you can go ahead and take a look. And I update articles and other content in Instagram and Twitter, and in Facebook I update workshops and webinars that I keep on doing on a regular basis. And that's my WhatsApp number. You are certainly welcome to talk to me, to connect with me with any cases that you want to discuss. Obviously it has to be orthopedics. I don't know anything beyond musculoskeletal practice. And any other discussion in orthopedic, osteopathy and chiropractic techniques that you want to learn, feel free to ask me. So again, the session is open to question and answer. Here I will stop. Give me a second, and then we will discuss more on that. Give me just a second before I stop.